Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. Well, it's 1 week before New Year's. Matter of fact, a little less than that. It's the 26th of December, day after Christmas, and I want to give you guys a podcast to end the year on. This one's kind of an interesting story. It's about the Sausage King of San Leandro. Sausage King of San Leandro was a guy who owned a sausage factory there in San Leandro, California, up near the Bay Area. Murdered 3 people and sentenced to death, died in prison, but he had a big VW stash that got taken and split apart and a bunch of stuff like that. So it's a great story coming up. But before we get into some of that, don't forget to support those that support Let's Talk Dubs podcast. VW Trends Magazine back out on the scene. Subscribe today at vwtrendsmagazine.com so you don't miss a single issue. Also, Ross Wolf, high quality aftermarket parts made for enthusiasts by enthusiasts. Ross Wolf, go check them out today. You get 10% off when you use the code LTD10, and that gets you 10% off of anything you purchase on the website. So make sure you guys go make some purchases before the year's over. Get that stuff you find. But you know what? Treat yourself for Christmas. Get yourself that stuff you've been waiting for a long time. And, get yourself some nice billet distributor clamps, billet distributor clamps, or even the locking dipstick. How about some Viton seals for the for your oil sump? Also Viton seals for the push rod tube. So if you got that leaky motor and you're tired of that, man, go to. Yeah, guys, see, I'm trying to throw one out for you just before the year's up. And listen, no retakes, baby. We roll it and we roll it. This is unscripted, if you can't tell, every week. And we just roll with it. So go check them out today at rosswolf.com. Don't forget the code LTD10 for 10% off. Also, if you're making plans for this summer, come and visit with me at the Impy Open House. It's going to be the Impy 70th anniversary. And that's going to be taking place June 20th at Impy HQ down there. But Impy's doing something else to support all their local dealers. And you guys should also support your local VW shops. And during Air-Cooled Appreciation Week, March 9th through the 14th, Impy's going to spotlight some specific dealers. When they spotlight those dealers from March 9th to 14th, they'll be at no cost to you. As part of the celebration, each participating dealer will receive a supply of the exclusive tote bag to give to the first 50 customers who visit the shop, spend $50 on Impy parts during the Air-Cooled Appreciation Week. So Impy will promote all participating dealers across all platforms, and they'll also, when you guys hear of if your dealer is that dealer, go out and support those dealers and go get yourself the Impy 70th anniversary tote bag collectible. So do what you can to support your local VW shops, guys. Our local VW shop here is Damn Volks in Boulder City. So go check them out, Damn Volks. Also, don't forget to go check out ssaircool.com. Steve and those guys down there, if you're down Southern California in the Anaheim area, go support Steve and his family over there at S&S Air Cooled. Their website's ssaircool.com, and go check them out today to get you some stuff shipped directly to your door. Support small mom and pop businesses, guys. You know, that's what we try to promote over here. I just got my new Hot VWs this month, and on the cover, it's our buddy Wayne Callahan here from Las Vegas, the cover of the Cowlick issue. Looking good. Big Wayne out there. Photo shoot by Eric Arnold, and it's a great shoot and pretty good cover, man. I like it. I might be biased because Wayne's a buddy of mine, but it all looks good, and I dig it. Congrats to my buddy Wayne Callahan. If you haven't checked out that episode, go back and check out the episode on Wayne Callahan's 68 Bug called 60 Watt, built by Type 1 Restorations, Buddy Hale. And it's a great story. He's the original owner of that car, so go check that out. Just thought I'd mention that to you guys. Also, we're going to be coming up. We're going to pick in the next week or so, we're going to do the best magazine cover of 2025. So we're going to go back through, look at them. I'll probably do that live with a bunch of the guys that we did last time. And we'll be going through and picking our favorite magazine covers from the year 2025 and see who brought their best when it came to covers. And might have a couple other options on there as well. So anyway, guys, appreciate you guys for listening to the podcast all year. Another great year in the books with a bunch of awesome podcasts, and this one's going to be just as good. So as I was saying at the beginning of the podcast, this one is about sausage, murder, and Volkswagen. So It's definitely an interesting story, and it's about one of these hoards in San Leandro, California. That was the lore of the neighborhood. Come to find out, no one knew who the owner was. There's a couple cool stories. My buddy John Limnios is on here with us, and we kind of go back and forth about what happened with this car collection. So definitely something that you want to hear about, and I'm sure this will be the beginning of a few things that are out there, because there have been some people that are connected indirectly and directly to this hoard that got dispersed. I'd like to get more information about it. So if you have more information about the topic that we talked about, know where the cars went and all that fun stuff, feel free to reach out to me, Bill at letstalkdubs.com. So without any further ado, guys, let's wrap up 2025 with the last podcast for Let's Talk Dubs for this year. I hope you enjoy it. Sausage, murder, and Volkswagens. The Sausage King's hoard and the lore of San Leandro on this week's Let's Talk Dubs.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the bug like.
Okay, everybody. So on today's podcast, we've got a guest that's been on the show before, my buddy John Limnios, and he's been a guest frequently on the show. Met him through the podcast, and he's up in the Bay Area. Drag racer and VW enthusiast. John, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how's it going, Bill? Thank you.
Hey, so we've been talking for a while, and up there near your neck of the woods, there's some stuff that took place in the VW scene back in the early 2000s that we wanted to talk about. And this podcast originally, I teased about it before on the podcast about the Sausage King and the collection that this guy had, and we're going to kind of go over that story so people can make this connection between VW hoards and murder. and this crazy stuff that's going on. Now you're up from that area, right? Up in near San Leandro.
So I grew up in San Leandro, yes, and now I'm like one city over.
And so to give people a little bit of context, San Leandro has a huge Portuguese population. It's a city kind of south of Oakland. So whatever, I kind of always joked that it was like the Portuguese retirement community. I don't know, kind of a quiet town growing up, excuse me. Yeah, it's interesting. I've got a friend that lives here in Vegas, and his heritage is Portuguese, and he's from the Bay Area up there. And then as I was kind of looking into the story, I realized there's a big Portuguese community there in San Leandro, and that ties into the Sausage King. Now, for people that and maybe I'm thinking we start this out as there's always those hordes that are in kind of a neighborhood. To put it in context, like recently there's a guy moved to town, and we talked about this a few minutes ago before this. He's moved to town from like Yakima, Washington, and he's bought a place near downtown. He's got a couple Type 34s stored over there that are projects for him to do. He was at one crazy weekend with his Fridlin, and every time someone goes by there, I get a text message. Hey, dude, have you seen these? Hey, do you know about these cars? Do you know this? And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of the same story every time, but there's always those places in town that kind of become like, oh, did you see these two cars over here? Did you see that one? There used to be a 23 window out in Pahrump, Nevada. And it just was kind of like right in this guy's front yard off of this lone road. And it was a 55 23 window. Bulkhead had been cut out and all this stuff. And I have pictures of the car because I went out there and took a bunch of pictures, and then a buddy of mine bought it probably 20 years ago and has done nothing with it. But there's always the folklore of these collections of VWs here and there. Now, with the Sausage King, that is Stuart Alexander. Yeah, that's his name.
Yes.
So were you aware of this collection that, like, from growing up and being a VW enthusiast, were you aware of a yard where there's a bunch of cars hidden?
Yeah. So growing up, riding my BMX bike, cruising through town and stuff, you'd kind of drive past, and I grew up in a car family. My family is all hot rodders and whatnot. And for whatever reason, I got bit by the bug, as everybody says.
Right.
So yeah, I, cruise my bike through and see, you could see like a bunch of VWs and stuff and like storage bins and stuff kind of in the back in this yard. But, being 12, 13, not really much more interest in that, than just cruising by and like being aware that it's there.
And then it's one of those things where it's like there's these cars in this yard and nobody really knows who this guy is, or you can know, because normally people can make a connection, like the car that's the group that's here locally, or the cars that are here locally. Someone sends it to me. I was like, yeah, I know who that guy is.
I yes, I totally get it. I mean, I have a 15 window in my front yard, so I get people coming by and people, oh, you're the guy with the bus in the front yard. Yes, I'm the guy with the bus in the front yard.
Right.
So, yeah.
So when you see these cars, like when you first see the cars, what is it you see in the cars in the collection or the hoard that you happen to see that you saw personally?
So I don't think there's any particular one that stood out. It was more the sheer volume of what was there and just early stuff. And, being that age, I wasn't completely into it. And it wasn't neon purple and neon pink and, like in the magazine. So I just kind of was aware that they were there and cruised by. Kind of later in the tale, kind of hear more of other friends, sneaking into the yard and whatnot. But for me growing up, I just kind of was aware that it was there and just kind of, that was it.
Well, and that's an interesting point you bring up, right? Because our generation, we were always into the, kind of the custom Volkswagens with, like you said, the graphics and the alloys and all that kind of stuff. And our interest was never peaked up until probably the late 90s, early 2000s, when the kind of that whole kind of resto mod kind of vintage early accessory style started to become a little bit more mainstream in the VW culture. Then that stuff kind of became, oh yeah, I know where there's this early convertible or whatever the case was.
Yeah, pretty much exactly that. Yeah.
And so, with that, because you're living up in that area, when this all goes down, because this takes place, so Stuart Alexander, to kind of give everybody who we're talking about, owned a place called, do you have a little bit of history about Stuart Alexander and this whole thing?
Yeah. And again, my age, I wasn't completely aware of it, and come to find out he went to school with my mom. So I was like, oh, let me ask my mom a little bit more. And she's like, I know the name. She's like, I don't know who he is. And I think she just knew who he was because of the situation that happened later in life. And everybody I talked to, nobody knew who he was. So for me, the mystery is always in my head has always been pre-internet and everything else. How did he acquire all these cars? As we've talked countless times and heard on the podcast, everybody knows of their local papers and Diablo dealers and penny savers and, all the nickel ads and this and that. But for him to get this quantity and these particular vehicles, I mean, these aren't 55 Chevys. These aren't the American cars that were kind of more available at the times. I mean, these were old, early convertibles, early split windows, early, and piles of pans, at the time, I don't know exactly what they were, but I had seen piles of pans. I mean, stacked 10, 15 tall.
Yeah, it's I have a list of some of the stuff that was in there. But so tying this all back together, let's do a little bit. Can you give me a little history on the Sausage King himself, like what his background is, what his connection is to San Leandro and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sorry. So to kind of get back, his family started a sausage company. What they were most famous for was their linguiça, Portuguese sausage, and that's kind of how they grew the business. I believe it was his grandfather that started, and then they kind of moved from there. The father had progressed, and there's a ton of podcasts about his history and his background and the whole murder thing. So, I mean, for me, it's interesting because it's kind of local history and everything. But yeah, it's whatever. It was a sausage company. And they kind of grew from that. And yeah.
Well, and I guess the whole Sausage King comes from, like, he dubbed himself the Sausage King, so the guy had, a little bit of a little bit of an ego, right? And then with respect to what happened and what made this guy famous is he was getting some heat by like the local food inspectors, right?
So yes, he definitely had an ego to himself. He at one point ran for mayor, and he would park a truck with a pig in the back of the truck outside of his opposing, the lady that was opposing him running as mayor as well. And he would park his truck outside of her office with a pig in the back. So a little off, a little weird. And that's kind of more local stuff. Obviously, that's not going to make the news because who the heck cares about that? But just pretty weird, kind of quirky guy.
Yeah, definitely. And that's part of the interesting part, right? This guy's he's an obsessive collector to some degree, because anytime you just start collecting stuff, it seems to be, we all have, I think a lot of us in the hobby have a little bit of an obsessive personality where we kind of really get into collecting particular things that are of interest to us. But for this guy, to have this collection and then for nobody kind of in the VW circles to know who he is, which is really the interesting part, right? Because there's a lot of these, sometimes what happens, and I've seen personally, I remember I was on the east side of town driving around and I saw a garage was open. I saw the back window of an oval window, and I'd stopped and started talking to the owner, and there was a early Carmen Ghia convertible in the garage, and all these cars hadn't been touched in years, and it was on a bad side of town. And I was like, holy cow, man, I just hit the mother lode. And I'm talking to the guy. He says, oh yeah, my kids want to restore those later, and this particular guy that I started talking to was a guy that was ex-military, worked in, was in the military in Germany, and then because of that kind of got into Volkswagens over there. He was a little bit of an engineer, and then started collecting them, and the cars that he happened to bring over from Germany were early rare cars, but he wasn't like in the scene, which is really the interesting part. Like for this guy to have what he had in his collection, and he's not, at least especially in the and maybe I don't know if he was known in the vintage scene, but there's not much people that kind of knew who this guy was in the VW scene specifically.
Yeah.
So I think, with what was in this collection, it's pretty interesting to have all this stuff. Now, I did pull a thing off the Somme, but there's a guy, he goes by the name 55 Somme, but I've shot him an email, and it says, so this was the quote that I found on the Somme. It says, people always love this story, so I figure I should post it. About 2 years ago, so this was posted in 2005. So it says, about 2 years ago, a guy I knew about was going to jail forever. He has no VW friends, but I knew he had a car or two. I went there. I went where I thought his yard was and met his parents, who asked with hesitation if I wanted to see his cars. You know what I said to that, right? We go into a large backyard to see about 60 to 80, or about 60 VWs. Only one or two are newer than 57. I look around and see 6 split windows, 2 55 verts, a 58 Ghia, and many, many ovals. About 15 plus pre-55 ovals. At that, 5 of the pre-55 had under 100K miles and were pretty nice. I then ask if I can buy the nicest car, which happens to be a 55 vert with 74,000 miles on it. I offer $3,500 to the couple, who replies that I was the first person who did not try to insult them with a $50 offer and tell them all the cars are crap. They offered to give me the car if I helped to sell the rest of the cars. Sounded like a fair deal to me. I bought one of the splits and a nice 70,000 mile 55 parts car for the split, since it was only a body, and proceeded to sell the cars. This was a very time-consuming, stressful event. We finally get done. The owners say, do you want to go and see the good cars now? Of course we did. And in a barn on another lot, there is a 52 early dash complete rag top, off the road since 70, 2 more 55 verts, an early 49 split, a 52 deluxe, and a 35,000 original mile oval. I sold my split and bought the 52 sunroof. The rest of the cars since sold. Along the way, I met some really nice people and I had a lot of fun. You would not believe the stories. I won't tell some of the rudest people I've ever met in dealing with this stuff. But it's people like that made this deal possible, right? People being rude to the owners. To me, the best part of the story was just being honest with these people made it possible for me to get better deals than the rude people that were trying to deal with them earlier. But I mean, it seems like, this guy Gabe, who's on the Samba, says there was 60 cars out in the yard, and all of them are like ovals and a bunch of splits and all this stuff. So it's a pretty incredible collection. And I know that in this particular thread that they were talking about, it's what is his name? Ray. What was Ray's shop back in the day? Ray Hubert had a shop back in the day.
Volks Authority.
Correct.
And of all the phone numbers and people that I kind of called about this, Gabe was the one guy that I was trying to get a hold of, and nobody had his number. And I was trying to get, because he was, yeah, like he said, he was the one that helped facilitate the sales of these. And I remember when it was all going on, there was a local Volkswagen shop called Buggy House in Hayward. I'm sure you've heard the name through the years, whatever.
I have.
And I remember Gabe coming in while this was going on. I was just kind of volunteering on the weekends to help, subsidize my addiction of VW parts.
Right.
But I kind of remember when that time was going on. But for me, I was in my early 20s, and I didn't have money to buy split windows and ovals and this and that. So it was just kind of fun being on the outside watching it go down.
Yeah, it was interesting because the title of this thread on the Samba is called "Sausage King Gets Sentenced to Death," and so part of the story with the Sausage King that makes this thing where he was tried for murder, right, is he was getting stressed by the people that were the health inspectors, and apparently murdered 3 of them, right? And then there was the lore out there that potentially some of these people ended up in the sausage.
That was definitely a thing for a while. Was, don't eat the sausage there; it's full of the people.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of wild to see that, and then there's definitely some there was in the Bay Area, there was kind of a flat red split rag top that was with skirts on it.
And that's my buddy Jeff.
Yeah, so that's Jeff's car, huh?
That was, yeah, and it's kind of floated its way through the Samba. We've watched it sell a few times. Actually, in the last 2 years, I think it made its way from Hawaii to Southern California or Arizona or something. So yeah, I remember that car.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a ton of cars that came out of that, and it's definitely one of those things where you're looking at so many cars from there. It would be interesting to try to track down where all those cars ended up, especially if it's what this guy says, what Gabe says in the collection. Like with that volume of cars, that had to just shoot a massive influx of ovals, especially early ovals, back into the scene. I mean, the amount of cars and parts that are back on the scene because of just that hoard. But I think that the craziest part is like nobody in the scene knew who this guy was.
Yes, I mean, even like I said about my mom that went to school with him, even people that lived in the town and went to school with him didn't know who he was. Not until this happened.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to have such a massive collection of stuff and nobody really know who you are. Yeah, it looks like I'm on here tracking that other thread that I did, but it's just nuts. And I guess Mark Merrill ended up with Mark Merrill ended up with the 36,000 original miles oval window. It's in Mark Merrill's collection, so that's the car that's on display in his collection, and it's 36,000 original miles. So I think that's just wild that this guy had to be kind of a fanatic in order for him to be able to just collect so many specific early cars. And back in those days, this is before the internet and stuff, what were they using? You guys had like a recycler or something up there?
Yeah, so there was Diablo Dealer, kind of mentioned before, Penny Savers, and I mean there was a bunch of different magazines, but in my head I still can't put together. I mean, these were European cars, and like I don't know, like I really got to feel like where and how did they make them to San Leandro? I don't know. San Leandro is a very quiet, boring town.
Yeah, and what's interesting is for there to be such a concentration of these super early cars to be there, it's almost like this guy had to be plugged in to somebody to get these cars because, I mean, for him to have so many low mileage, original unrestored cars, he had to be piped into somebody, whether it was dealerships or somebody that would take trades, and they'd call them up and say, hey, we got another one of those old Volkswagens if you want to buy this one or whatever. Because that's the only thing that I can think is like, how do you collect so many of these early cars? It's one thing if you're in the junk business, right? Like if you have a junkyard and people bring cars, you kind of get first right of refusal of everything. But if you're in the sausage business, you got nothing to do with cars. I mean, how do you collect this much stuff? And then for nobody to know who the guy was in the scene, like normally people know who people are just because of, when a rare car comes up for sale, there's like 5 people's names that pop up that get the phone call that a rare car is for sale, So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's definitely something unique. And when these cars went for sale, were you like in the scene at that time? Like you knew about these cars that were for sale, or what did you know at that time, or were you just not even interested in it?
No, so like I said, I was in my early 20s, and I knew I didn't have money to buy any of these, so I was just kind of watching it from the outside. But I do recall kind of talking to a couple buddies, and before the actual incident happened, I was talking to one of my close buddies, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, we he drove his notchback out there and was talking to him. Excuse me, talking to one of the people that lived on the properties, and he said, "Hey, I'd like to go check out the collection in the back." And he goes, "Oh yeah, sure, go ahead, go back there." Well, so he goes in the back and he's checking it out, and then sees a hole in the fence and kind of walks through that hole, and then is approached by a bigger biker dude on an adjacent property that's still yet full of VWs. And that's when he kind of freaks out, because we've always heard, and again, this is kind of kids, that he was attached to a local bike club, that people knew him, not that he was in it, but he was just, may have dealt with them. So we, again, were kids and didn't know. We're like, oh man, this must be the Hells Angels and whatever, who knows? And so he's kind of approached by the guy, and the guy goes, "Wait here." Well, then, he's told to wait there. He's kind of panicking, this big biker dude, "Wait here." He's like, "Oh crap." And then Stuart shows up, and Stuart starts screaming at him, yelling at him, "Hey, get the hell out of here. I'm going to kill you. I know who you are. I know where you live. I know your car." And, these are VWs. We all know where we live in town and whatever. And it's like, oh crap, like he does know where I live. But he didn't really think much of it after. And then come to find out a couple months later, he does end up killing people. So it's like, oh man, he did actually have it in him. So
yeah, no,
yeah.
that's the strange thing. There's so much unknown, and the part that I really want to try to figure out is like, how did these cars come to be? How does he collect all these cars? Where is it? Because he has to have a pipeline somewhere. Either that, or this guy's just obsessed looking at the those penny savers or whatever, just looking for anything early that comes up for sale just to buy it. Because the pictures that you'd sent me, I was reviewing these pictures, and a lot of the cars, I mean, I don't know, the 35,000 original mile car, he had to have that stored somewhere, but these other ones, it looks like there's just a fleet of cars parked fender to fender in the backyard, just taking up every square inch of it. So it's definitely interesting how so many of these early cars just ended up right there in this guy's.
Yeah. The only other thing I can think of, and, you're Greek and other friends here, have family overseas. And I'm like, did he have somebody overseas helping him out, helping facilitate any of this stuff? But
Well,
yeah, again,
the other thing that I can think of is just like, when we talked I've mentioned several times on the podcast of the mechanic Stavros that my mom used to make me go to, right? The Greek mechanic. So if you're if you're in a Portuguese, because my buddy Joe, his mom was Korean, and he had a 1980 turbo Trans Am, and he took it in because it wasn't running right. And the guy's like, let's get rid of this turbo setup that's on here. It's like a factory pace car. The guy junks all the stuff, just puts a regular carburetor on this turbo Trans Am from back in one of the pace cars back in the day, because he had to go to this Korean mechanic. Not had to, but you kind of stay within kind of your community. So I wonder if there was a mechanic, like a foreign car mechanic in the Portuguese community up there that just knew this guy and said, oh, this guy's got a thing for Volkswagens. Anyone that I get, I'll just pipeline to this guy, So that could
maybe
that could be another way in which these cars ended up in that location. But yeah, we'll plan on doing some a little more digging in this thing. But I'm going to read this thing that was on the Contra Coast Times, and just kind of read a deal here about what they put in the paper. It says, convicted murderer Stuart Alexander, self-proclaimed sausage king, who gunned down 3 meat inspectors in a San Leandro sausage factory in June of 2000. This is when he died, so he passed away in San Quentin. And matter of fact, I have had some people from San Quentin on the podcast, and I should reach out to him, see if he knew anything about the Sausage King. Alexander was found unconscious in a cell about 4:30 a.m. and attempts to revive him were unsuccessful. Was pronounced dead at 5:15 a.m. There were no overt signs of foul play, but Alexander, 44, had been kept in a special observation unit for several days because of his reoccurring mental health issues. Prison staffers were assigned checking Alexander due to those issues. He was having a difficult time adjusting to incarceration. So this was after he was convicted and sentenced to prison for, I think was he given the death sentence?
I believe so, yeah.
So some people don't hold up well under incarceration. A lot of people go through that, especially with a death sentence. Yeah, they screwed him up on meds. That's what someone says. Alexander's mother, Shirley Eckhart, said she believes her son was put on new medications once he went to prison, and that he did not respond well. And that's where she said they screwed him up on the meds, is what she said. Messick said Alexander suffered from no overt physical health, but Eckhart said she was concerned about her son's health because he had gained nearly 100 pounds since his time of arrest. Alexander was convicted at trial in October 2004 on 3 counts of murder with special circumstances for gunning down 3 inspectors at the Santos Linguiça factory in June 21st, 2001. At the trial, Alexander's attorneys said he believes inspectors are harassing him and intended to close down the factory, which Alexander's family had operated for 79 years. Months before the shooting, inspectors had cited the factory for several violations, asserting Santos wood-fired cooking methods were not heating its specialty pork linguiça adequately, raising concerns about harmful bacteria.
Yeah, they wanted to raise the temperature of what they were smoking it at. And he was claiming that it was drying out his sausage, and they were claiming that he wasn't bringing up the meat to correct temperatures to be served.
Yeah, and it says killed were 2 U.S. Department of Agriculture inspectors, Gene Hillary, 56, of Alameda, and Tom Quaderos, 52, of Hayward, and State Department of Agriculture investigator Bill Shane, 57, of American Canyon. A 4th inspector, Earl Willis, escaped after running from the factory and ducking bullets. Alexander fired in his direction and chase lasted for several blocks. A surveillance camera inside the factory captured the killings. The video shows Alexander shooting 3 inspectors as they waited for him in the factory's front sales area. Alexander then disappears for several minutes, presumably to chase Willis. After he returns, the video shows Alexander calmly walking up to the fallen inspectors and then shooting each of them in the head. Wow. That's crazy, bro. That's, I guess, maybe government overreach going a little too far. I don't know. It's wild, man. It's definitely a wild story. And for it to be tied to this crazy VW hoard with these cars that ended up flooding the scene with quite a few ovals and split windows It's pretty interesting, man, and I just felt it needed a little bit of visibility on it. Anything as we're kind of wrapping this thing up that you think that we didn't talk about that should have been talked about?
So kind of what sparked this, and this is going to kind of be a weird tangent, but I think it'll all tie in. I was talking to another friend and his family. It's a local motorcycle shop here. It was discussion about in the 80s, him being around and seeing guys walk in with piles of cash and having motorcycles built, and then they disappeared. So obviously some things, were happening, extracurricular activities for them to come up with piles of cash.
Sure.
But I guarantee there's other stories of this in the community, just across, and I just thought it was kind of fun, kind of interesting. Everybody always likes a little bit of, violence and whatever, and it's exciting, whatever. But it just kind of was a story that just sat in my head, and I'm like, what's the whole background of this? Like, because the murder podcast has been done 17,000 times about this. But for us as the car community, it was like, hey, this is really interesting as far as his extensive collection during a time that this was just not the norm. I mean, like we said, guys were having pink and purple and yellow and this and that. And he just seemed to be hoarding these original stock vintage, cars, and was perfectly content with them just sitting there. And how and why did these come around, and what, that was kind of more so what I was interested in. Like you said, we're all kind of hoarders and we have our collections and stuff, but it was just to that extent. And obviously, he had a little bit of money and stuff, but it was just, the whole thing was just very interesting how much and how big he had, and to be in an area that it's not super popular. We're not Southern California, as everybody dubs as the VW hub.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely something that's interesting, especially when it comes to like back in the 90s, things like that. I remember talking with Russell at Old Speed, and he's talking about, guys that come in that may have extracurricular activities that want race motors built for the street races in Compton or whatever, and they're coming in with bags of cash, and so there's a lot of that. And there's a guy who's been a writer, contributing author and photographer in the VW community, and I've had several off-air conversations, and I'm like, there just needs to be a book of like, and I'm not saying like the dark side of the VW world, but there is a whole nother layer of stuff that goes on in the VW community that I think is pretty wild, that would definitely garner some interest. Just some interesting things that you may not know how things came to be. I mean, you look at Ed Papak's car, that Top Gun, where it was, it was all the rage in the late 70s and early 80s, that wild bug that's got the body that tilts up with the Porsche motor in it and the wicker interior and all that stuff. Well, that car was going to be raffled off, and then it got, quote, stolen. Meanwhile, the car's found, 15, 20 years later in a hidden room in a garage, and there was an insurance claim filed in the car. The car ended up going to the insurance company, then went to auction to the guy that owns it now. But it's like, I'd love to get the story on that car because, there's just so many interesting things that happen in the VW scene. And especially, there was one East Coast just recently where a guy had a restoration shop, which is the same old story, right? A guy taking a bunch of huge deposits from people, never doing any work. So there's always that, but there's definitely the not so sunny and bright side of the VW hobby that I would love to do a series of stories on, because there's just so much, there's just so many people that are into it. Anytime I think predators find an opportunity where people are really into something from a hobby standpoint, they find a way to kind of peel some money off of people. So, it's always the motive, right? Is money
definitely.
or another. So, well, yeah, no, that's rad, man. I think it's definitely something that is of interest, and I think there's lots more stories. And I'd love to hear from Gabe, the guy that sold the collection, because I guess I would bet there's a whole other story from the perspective of the family.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, I kind of knew who he was. I was like friends adjacent with him. And the few people I knew that knew him said that they just haven't, they kind of lost contact with him. So curious where he ended up. And I know he ended up with a car. I don't know how many, but yeah, it'd be cool to kind of pick his brain just because he dealt with it a little bit more. And maybe he knows a little bit more behind how some of these were acquired.
Yeah. No, definitely. And they might have some. I think he would, probably be the closest person to have the actual story. And it's interesting because he says he has hundreds of pictures of the cars, which he helped. And his story, he helped the family sell the cars, which is, cool to have them help to get rid of that stuff to raise some money for the family for whatever. But to be a
Yeah, I mean, I know a couple of the guys that showed up to buy some of the things. I mean, Gabe had called another friend and said, "Hey, get here right now. We're picking up a 48." And basically he showed up and said, "Hey, stuff as many parts as you can in that thing and walk out, with it." And I mean, it was just boxes of, snowflake tail lights and just any other parts. It's just load the car and go. Yeah. So there was definitely hordes of parts there. And so, yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Well, I'll definitely follow up and find some more information out. But I think this is a good place to start with the San Leandro Sausage King VW Hoard. I think is definitely something kind of cool to put out there, and we'll definitely post some pictures up on the blog on my website about this, so people can see some of the pictures that I got from you, and then some other ones that I can maybe track down and see something else. So, well, cool, bro. Well, I appreciate you for coming on, man. Happy New Year, and what's new and exciting with the with the racing programs that are out there now, right? Because you've been involved a lot with the Volks group, right? With doing their kind of street class. What's their street class called?
Street NA.
So street NA. So it's naturally aspirated stuff. And how did this year work out for you?
Worked out fine. I had a blast. I mean, it's a fun class. It definitely. I don't know. I kind of attribute it to like the working man's class, is I know what we're trying to keep it as. The loafers may have come up and spanked us a little bit, and that's all right, as they should. But had a blast. I still think Volks Group races out there is the best time. As a weekend, it's a solid event.
Yeah. It's how many races do they have now?
Currently, there's only 2 a year. So they kind of, after Buggerama fell out, they did jump on the Labor Day and Memorial Day weekends, and we do Samoa and Medford. I know they're definitely working on getting a third race, which would be awesome. So they're just kind of working the bugs out with that, where and when, because nobody's trying to jump on anybody else's event. Definitely trying to respect the other promoters and not ruin it. You don't want to do it too close, because then racers are having to choose, because most of us aren't making a whole lot of money doing this. Right.
Yeah. It's definitely something that with all the tracks closing down in Southern California, I know that Bug-In is going to be doing their bug in Bakersfield, so we'll see how that Now you're going to test the Southern California people. Are they willing to drive to Bakersfield? Because I think everybody in Southern California is so spoiled because events are so close and so frequent. And this comes back to where, I do a local swap meet here in Las Vegas, just an all car swap meet. And every time I do it, someone goes, "You should do this every month." And I'm like, it won't make it every month, because what will happen is there are so many events. People go, "I'll just go to the next one. I'll go to the next one. I'll go to the next one." And I think we'll find out, right? We'll find out if this year's Bug-In will be successful by going out to Bakersfield, because people really want to race. That's where they got to go. So now in Southern California, they've got Barona and they've got Barona. That's all they've got. And you got to go up to, and you have to go up to Bakersfield, I think, for the next track. So we'll see. We'll see what.
For me, it feels like the racers will always go where the track is. I mean, I don't know. I think we're just we're used to it. We know it's few and far in between. I think it's the show cars that are going to be a little bit more of a task.
I would
You
agree
know,
with
it's just
you on the racers if there wasn't this north-south division going on that I can't figure out why. It seems like the Northern California guys come down to Southern California more than the Southern California guys go up to the Northern California. And I don't know.
I think there was when Sacramento was there. I think there was a solid group that came. I don't know. Again, it's just kind of my 2 cents. I don't know. I try to stay out of that, and I try to just go, welcome everybody with open arms. It's,
Yeah, I'm not trying to make drama by any means, but I'm like trying to get people to get through their thick skulls. Like, if you guys don't support this, if you don't support the events don't happen. That's just the way that it is, so if you guys,
absolutely,
if you guys sit home and complain about there's no events, but you don't go to the events that are there, well, you're the reason why there's no events, because that's the thing with Vegas. Someone just texted me the other day asking me, what does Vegas cost per day? And I don't know for sure. I do know pretty close. It's going to be $25,000 to $30,000. So,
and that's what I've heard as well. Which is obscene for a VW event.
That is one day. And so the problem is, now you come to Vegas, and when you go to Vegas, it's one of these things where it's like, well, you're in Vegas. Do you want to be 50 miles off the strip, or do you want to be somewhere closer? So
yeah.
We'll see. Hopefully it works out for him. I don't know if I'll go to Bakersfield for that event. I got a bunch of stuff going on. We'll see how the summer works out, but good luck to them if they do it. And I think it's a multi-day event. I'm not sure, but what can you do? Well, all we can do is just keep supporting. And what are your thoughts on this event not having the Corey Mack event?
About not having the Corey Mack event?
Yeah, what do you think about that?
I don't know. It is.
What do you think?
It's sucks it didn't work out. I don't have the same relationship I do with some of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
I have some very close friends that have had big falling outs with him in that event, and that sucks. But I'm also I'm nobody. I don't know. I don't have a big race car. I got my little street car, so I try to show up to what I can, and I do what I can. It sucks that that's what happened. The flip side is that I'll say, when he made this announcement about the weather, the forecast did look bad.
Did it?
So, well, I did look at it. I was like, oh, let me see. And I was like, oh, okay, the potential rain was there. Did it happen? No. Was this the reason? I don't know. It sucks. It definitely complicates things going forward. But I always say that to any event, to any business, to anything going on, and it's a business, he's trying to keep this going, but you can't do it for free. It's not,
no,
it's
absolutely.
Consistency. So when you start changing your hours, when you start changing your program, when you start dropping things, people aren't as receptive to go do things. So that makes it tough.
Yeah. My 2 cents from at least where I stand, and I look at this through the eyes of a promoter, I saw zero promotion happening on it. And I think the promotion was too little too late. And hopefully they'll kind of kick it into gear and do a little more advanced promotion on it, because that's the only, you need the spectators as much as you need the participants, as much as you need the sponsors. You need everybody to contribute to make something like this be successful. So
it's definitely not a race if the racers don't show up, and there's definitely no money to be made if spectators don't show up. So I completely agree with that. I mean, if it's just a bunch of racers, it's just a bunch of racers, and I've been to plenty of races like that. There's not really any money to be made at events like that. It's just kind of a track day.
Yeah. Well, Johnny, it's good talking to you. And, if there'll be more updates on this story, I'm sure, if this podcast goes out, and hopefully this will rattle some memories. And I'd like to, at the end of this thing, with everything that happened with all these cars that came out of the hoard, I would love to have anybody that bought a car reach out to me at Built Let's Talk Dubs and just let me know what happened with this car, what happened with the history of it, and all that good stuff, because it'd be neat to kind of track down the cars from the collection, if there were that many cars. I mean, the pictures that you sent me, it for sure looks to be at least a dozen cars, if not more, so.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot. I know there's a guy in Southern California, and I met him in Solvang, and he drives a convertible, mangoish color. I don't know what color, what the correct name is for that year or whatever. But I remember running into him, and I was like, hey, this came from the Bay Area. And he was like, oh, yeah. And I kind of told him, and he was like, what? So there's definitely a few cars out there that people don't even know this, they bought, but don't even know the story behind how that car became. So.
Right. Yeah. And I wonder if Gabe has a list of the VIN numbers. That would be wild. We'll see. We'll see. I sent him.
Yeah, I don't know.
I sent him a message, and we'll see what happens with that. So,
okay. Yeah. That'd be awesome to hear his perspective on the whole thing.
Well, right on, brother. Well, what shows you plan? You plan ahead of any shows this year besides, of course, One Crazy Week? Any other VW shows you're going to be hitting this year?
I'll definitely be at Kelly Park. Definitely hitting the Volks group stuff. I mean, I do as much as I can with those guys, cooking and stuff for them and everything else. I don't know. Trying to kind of figure things out, but we'll see. I'll try to see if I can make one of the SoCal VW events. I've always wanted to do the one in the RVA show down there. And I've talked the last few years about driving my convertible down there. It's just a stock convertible.
It's a long
I think it
drive.
would fit in.
No, that's a cool.
I really enjoy windshield time. So yeah.
No, I'm with you, man. I'm hoping. Hopefully, I get up to Kelly Park this year. So I'd like to bring Zorb out to Kelly Park, and last time.
Take a shot.
What's that?
Take a shot.
That's it. Well, I like to go to I like the Red Barn swap meet. I like all that stuff that happens that weekend. Again, it's more about if there's a weekend of events of stuff to go to, it makes it more fun than just like showing up, driving somewhere for one show.
Maybe we can strong arm Ray into some stories about the collection of what they bought.
Well, for sure. I'm gonna be hitting him up too. So I'm trying to track down as much as I can about this. So right on. Johnny, have a happy new year, man, and we'll do it again. All right, brother.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you.
Well, guys, that's the end of 2025 for Let's Talk Dubs. I hope you guys have enjoyed the podcast coming out on a weekly basis. Those of you that know, and support your favorite podcast by going to letstalkdubs.com. Pick up some merch if you hadn't yet. I've been dragging on getting some new merch out there, but I promise it'll be soon, getting some stuff out there. And appreciate you guys for supporting Let's Talk Dubs podcast. Don't forget to support our sponsors and support those that support Let's Talk Dubs. Guys, I won't be at Busted by the Bridge this year, unfortunately, because I've got some conflicting schedule issues. But definitely we'll see you guys at some of the events this year. We'll start putting that together on the next episode. That the first one will be popping. They come out every week, baby. Every week, unstoppable like a freight train. That's your boy Bill. So appreciate Johnny Limnios for coming on and helping me get this podcast put together. And if you guys have more interesting stories that you want to hear about, hit me up at bill@letstalkdubs.com. That's my email. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and all the best to all you guys. God bless all you guys and your family. And until next week, guys, later.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the bug like.